All right, this is part 2 of the trig ratios. This one you will need a calculator for so that we can calculate the exact values of it also. Later on, I think we've got some calculator stuff down here, but there's exact values. So when exact values we have, we need to use our special triangles. So first off, draw where 150 is. So this one is a review from last time, right? So 150 I know is in quadrant 2. And that gives me a reference angle of 30 degrees, 60 there and there. So I know that this is root 3. My hypotenuse is a 2, and that will be a 1. And then I also know that's going to be negative because it is going left. All right, and you can get it by the cast rule because CAST, this one will be positive in that quadrant. All right, so sine 150, sine is opposite over hypotenuse, so 1/2, and it is positive. All right. Let's do a negative one. So this one, these next 3 are the new ones. So let's do the negative one. So again, locate where negative 135 would be, and that would be your quadrant 3, right? So I need my reference angle again. So 180 minus 135 gives me a 45-degree angle. So this is 45, that's 45, -1, -1, and a root 2 is my special triangle. So tan -135 is equal to tan is -1 over -1, which gives me a 1. And again, cast rule says tan needs to be positive. So I'm good there. All right. Now we have the reciprocal trig functions. All right. So cosecant is the opposite of sine, and sine theta is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. So this one needs to be hypotenuse over opposite. All right. So again, 315 is going to be located in quadrant 4 with a reference angle of 45, because 360 minus 315 gives me a 45. And that gives me a 1, -1, and a root 2 again. And cosecant 315 is hypotenuse, which is root 2, over opposite, which is -1. So I'm just going to clean that up, and that's going to give me a negative square root 2. Cast rule, just make sure, in case you've dropped that negative there. And really, they shouldn't be negative in the first place because they are distances, but we put them on just so that we don't forget our signs. And secant 1125. So let's deal with the secant first. That's the opposite of cos, right? Cos is adjacent over hypotenuse. So this one will be hypotenuse over adjacent. But we also have a coterminal angle here that is several times spun around. So let's find our basic one, right? So you could just keep subtracting 360 off, right? 1125, and just keep subtracting. But if I divide it by 360, right, it tells me there's 3 of them and a little bit. So 3 times 360 means I just need to subtract off 1080, right? Because 3 times 360 equals 1080. And so 1125 minus 1080 gives me 45 degrees. That's my reference angle. All right, and that means, and it's positive, so that means it will be in quadrant 1. If that was a negative angle, I would have been in quadrant 4. So I got a 45, 45, 90, 1, 1 root 2, and we found out to be hypotenuse over adjacent, which is 1, so root 2. We didn't have any rationalizing of the denominator, but you may get that in your assignments. And just make sure, cast rule, everything's positive in that quadrant, so I didn't need to do that. But all right, so that's exact values. That's part example 4. Now we get to the combination that has the decimal parts, where you have to actually substitute it into your calculator. Now make sure that we are in the mode of degrees. Everything should be in the mode of degrees because none of these are radians. All right. So sine and cos. So we're going to go back to the very basic one. All right. It says 5 decimal places are needed or 2 decimal places on angles. All right. So this one here is an angle of 119 degrees. And so I know the angle, right? All I have to do is type sine 119 into my calculator and it gives me the decimal. That's all it's asking for in this one. So 0.8746, and then I'm going to round the last one to a 2. Or I guess you could leave it as a 1, 2. It doesn't make a difference. You can round or you can just take the first 5 without rounding. All right. So there's the first one. So all 3 of these first ones, they've given you the degrees. The last 2 are the ones where they're asking you to actually find the angle. All right. So this one was a positive sign. We just substituted in. You just put it in a calculator. Just put in calculator. And that's the same with this one. Just put in calculator. Because you do have a tan button, tan, and then all you have to do is make sure that you put your negative on the 242. Just like that. Oh, don't do that, otherwise you'll get an error. And then hit the equal button. So this one is negative 1.8807, and I'm not going to round the last one. Let's go back and fix this guy. Let's put him back to his 1. And no rounding needed. All right. So those ones are exactly the same as they've always been. Okay. So the next one, though, however, is a cosecant. That's the opposite of sine. So the thing is that we need to change to sine theta. And how we do that is we take the reciprocal of the question. Reciprocal of the question. This was cosecant 130. Flip it upside down, and we get a sine 230. It's the inverse of it. So cosecant 230 in the numerator is the same thing as having a sine 230 in the denominator because they are reciprocals of each other. Inverse ones. All right, so now I just have to go 1 divided by sine 230, just like that, and hit my equal. So this is going to be negative 1.30540. So with any of those, cotan, cosecant, or secant, you just do 1 over the primary one. All right. Let's look at this one. So these ones are finding the angles. So anytime we're finding an angle and we just have a cos, remember, we move it to the other side by going cos to the negative 1 of negative 0.41040. All right. So I go second function cos, negative 0.41040. And I end up with A being 114, and they want 2 decimal places, so we'll go 2 decimal places, 23 degrees. So we're looking for angles this time. So before we can calculate this, we have to do the reciprocal, okay? So the reciprocal of cotan is a tan. So in order for me to change cotan to tan A, I have to go over here and flip this guy upside down. All right. And then I can move my tan to the -1 over, because I do have a button for that. And then 1 over 0.03492. And then I put it in my calculator. Second function tan, they've already got a bracket, 1 divided by 0.03492. And then I'm going to close my bracket. And I'm going to get an 88, pretty much an 88-degree angle. But they want 2 decimal places, so I'll put my 2 decimal places on. And there it is. Make sure that you've written down all the work here so that you can refer back to them when you're doing your assignment. Those cover every single one of the cases. All right. So let's look at some of the questions. This one here you have seen before. All the values of angle A, so it could be theta, between 0 and 360 degrees for sine A is equal to, and then they give me the decimal place, and then round. All right. So first off, I'm going to find that angle. So I'm going to go A is equal to sine to the -1 of 0.45312. All right. So that's step 1, find angle. So second function sine, decimal 45312. And I'm going to round to 2 decimal places. Okay, angle A is equal to 26.94 degrees. There it is. Now it says between 0 and 360, so that second is my cast roll, C-A-S-T, and I need sine to be positive, so I know it's in quadrant 2 and 3. So when I have my 2 angles here, that 26.94 degrees is each of those, my reference angles. So remember, what are they asking you for? They're asking you for the theta angles, right? These are standard position angles. The reference angles will only help you figure out what it is. So they're asking you for that angle, and they're asking you for that one. So in quadrant 1, that 26.94 is exactly the same as your reference angle. And then the other one would be 180 minus the 26.94. And it would be 153.06 degrees. And there's your other one. Okay. So again, find the value of A, so it could be theta, and they again give us tan is equal to this. So again, I'm going to go find your angle first. Angle A is going to be equal to tan to the -1 of -1.23456. Angle A is equal to second function tan -1.23456. And I get a 50.99, and it's negative. Now the negative really doesn't mean anything, right? It just happens to be negative because of that. If you had dropped your negative there, then it would become positive. But it is a reference angle too, and it tells me that I need tan to be negative. So that puts me here and here. Theta is there, or angle A, I guess. So that tells me that these are 50.99 and 50.99. I need that angle there, and I need that angle there. So one of them is 180 minus the 50.99, giving you 129.01. And the other one is 360 minus 50.99, 309.01. Okay, those ones were the primary ones, and they're not really any different than what we've been doing already, right? But let's look at the last two questions. These are both with the reciprocal ones. They tell me I'm in quadrant 3, and they give me a secant equal to this. So again, the first thing I need to do is find my angle. But I'm working with secant A is equal to negative 4.25889. So secant is the reciprocal of cos. So I'm going to change it back to cos, but I have to go 1 over. I have to do the reciprocal of my other side. These guys are reciprocals of each other, and therefore I need to write their answers also in reciprocal form, which means flip it. A is going to now be cos to the negative 1 of that answer. And so angle A is going to be, when I punch it into my calculator, I get a 103.58. Now we know that's not a reference angle because of the fact that it's not acute. So let's draw it out and see what angle my calculator gave me. All right. So I need the cast roll to tell me where this thing is located. It's a negative there. And I'm dealing with cos, or secant. Cos and secant, it's negative here. Well, they already told me it was in third quadrant. I should listen to the question. So it's in the third quadrant. So what did they give me that's 103? Well, that would be this. 103.58. It doesn't know that it wants to give you the reference angle. Okay, so that means that angle A is there. I need this one, right? Standard position angle is from this line to there. I need this. So that means that I'm going to take 360 minus that 103.58, right? Because full revolution is 360 minus 103.58, and I'm going to get that angle be 256.42 degrees. So the only thing that's different is this step right here. Now the last one is exact value. So either special triangles, or I have to use Pythagorean theorem and find my missing side. In the looks of it, since I have a square root 11 and a 5, not going to happen. And then they also have a parameter here, only from 90 to 270. Well, 90 to 270 doesn't use those two quadrants. That means either quadrant 2 it has to be in, or quadrant 3, or it could be in both. Let's see. We're dealing with cotan. So according to cotan, C-A-S-T, and it's positive, tan is only positive in that quadrant. So therefore, when we X these ones out right away, tan is not positive in this quadrant, so we're going to cross that one out too. Because cotan and tan are reciprocals of each other. So I'm only looking at quadrant 3. So I'm going to draw quadrant 3 out. And they tell me that cotan A is equal to root 11 over 5. Cotan is the opposite of tan, so TOA. So if I look that direction, adjacent over opposite is what? cotan is. So adjacent is this side here, opposite is this side here. And I'm going to put the negatives back on it because they would have canceled themselves out because there's two negatives. And I'm missing, I have to find sine A and cos A. That means I'm going to need a hypotenuse. So let's do our, so number 2 is find your hypotenuse. So I'm going to drop the negatives because you're going to square it anyways. Square root 11 squared, and I'm adding to find my radius, my hypotenuse. Remember, a square root and a square cancel each other out. I get 11 plus the 25, giving me 36 equaling r squared. So square root of 36 gives me 6 equaling r. So that side here is 6. And the last step is to write my sine A. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. And cos A is right here. Should label my picture. And A is negative square root 11 over 6. And again, I'm in quadrant 3, so tan is the only one that needs to be positive. Both of them are negative. I'm good to go. All right, you can now finish the assignment. And I also gave you 4 old quizzes to work on too. So enjoy yourself. You should be able to finish everything in this assignment all the way to the end on page 8, plus the 4 quizzes. All right. I will see you Monday.